Okay, guys, today we are going to talk about pattern and texture. Last week we talked about rhythm. Uh, Anyone, can you guess there is a relationship between rhythm and pattern, just like some common characteristic? Um, Anyone can suggest what it is? Just guess it. Pattern, just think about a pattern and the rhythm. Yeah, both repetitive. Yeah. You can see the rhythm, also the music beats, it repeats. Also the pattern, you have certain modules, it repeats. So actually, what is pattern? Pattern is a combination of elements repeated, but in a regular arrangement. Just like it's not the rhythm, there is a difference because rhythm, it varies. You cannot say like uh, do you guys remember about the building that we had, that the facade have the triangle, but all the triangles are not the same, but even though it's repeated, but in pattern, most of the time you can identify a certain module and it repeats, and it can repeats all over the place, like what we call the it's crystallographic, like all over the pattern. So let's go here. Let's see here how the pattern can be also simple and complex. It can be just say small circles, you have circles and repeated in a certain distance. It also a pattern, but it might have a combination of shapes together, but that whole thing work as a module and repeated. That's also a pattern. Here, this is a simple pattern. Can you see this hexagon is repeated on all the sides? And can you see there is no gap in between? This is another, this is a different type of pattern, like we are saying it tessellation. It's like having no gaps in between. So let's go here. See, this is also a pattern. This is like, can you see, can you identify, this is a one module, it modules repeated top, the in x-axis and y-axis, just all over the place. But in a rhythm, you don't need to have the same thing, but it can varies with certain variations. It can be a regular arrangement or irregular as well. And also you can see the pattern in everywhere, in architecture, in grocery stores, how the things are arranged, in apparel industry. You can find it in interior spaces everywhere. And okay. So pattern is also, as you see in the previous slide, these hexagons repeated, it's like a grid pattern. It can be grid pattern. It can work as a linear pattern as well. And you can also use the abstract, like saying like geometric shapes, and also you can have certain other object kind of a objects repeated, also a pattern. It doesn't need to be a totally a geometric shape to create a pattern. See here how this pattern created, like using a one arrow and repeating it on top, and you have a mirrored one here, and it repeats all over the place, like see. And also the color can play a major role in creating the pattern. Also repeating colors also, it's like you can use colors, shapes, line, and also the texture. We are going to learn about it in a little while. So see how this pattern created using the arrows and the colors. But it has a regular arrangement. It doesn't vary. So that's how we are going to identify the pattern. So Islamic architecture is a great place, and we can find so many patterns in their inside their buildings. Do you guys know why is that most of the time Islamic architecture uses these geometric shapes and these patterns? Anyone have idea? Because in the religion, it restricts certain using of figurative elements. So they use the geometric shapes to represent those or to decorate those things. They hardly use the human figures. And see how the shapes has been. This is like a one module repeated. So this one we identified as a pattern. And also, can you see no gaps in between? So that's why this is also one shape. That one is called the tessellation. That is having no gaps in between those modules. And this is another pattern, but it varies a little bit, but it in a certain scale. It reduces in a certain scale. It never changes, doesn't have a big variety, but has a constant variation. This is also another good example for a pattern, and also a rhythm it creates. See how the colors are used to create the pattern as well. See the different colors used as a one module and repeated. And because of this using of different colors, this gives a texture. Now we will go to learn about texture. So anyone knows what is texture actually? Any idea? What? I didn't get you. The way something? Physical, like the way it feels. It feels, yeah, right. Okay, sorry, I understand. I did not understand it. So yeah, it's kind of a physical thing, but it doesn't need to be totally physical, because sometimes you can create textures by using different materials. As an example, let's think about a door that you have. In a door, sometimes you use wood. So that's we are trying to show the texture of the wood, like the grains and all that. So that's physical thing. You feel it, you say, you get the sensation of the texture. But you guys know that the texture of the wood can be made with a different material, like using a plastic or any other material like a board, and you can paint it with the texture, but to give the same appearance and the same sense of the texture, the feeling of it, without touching it. Because it sometimes happen because of your the past memory that you have. When you see the timber planks, you see those grains and all that. That's how you feel that this is a wooden texture. So that can be generated using also those paints and different material as well. So it's totally not a physical thing, but as you feel it, you sense it, the appearance of the surface. So texture is the sense of touch, and how how the surface appearance will sense. As you remember, we learned about this kinesthetic empathy. It's like perceive certain things. By perceiving things, it stimulates our other senses, like the past memory and our like the sixth sense. We feel, we sense how that texture is without even going closer to those textures, just by looking at it and reading through our past memory. And texture and pattern, there is a difference also, but pattern it's a regular repetition, but in this texture, it's more irregular repetition. So it doesn't need to be the same thing, but it has to feel the texture, light and shade will play a major role. So when you see some rough surfaces, you see how can you see those rough surfaces, like without touching it? Yeah, negative space, negative and positive space, and also about certain bits of light and shade appearing on certain surfaces. See also here how it creates like the negative and positive, dark and light and dark. And these are some examples for the texture. So what do you think this is, the texture, with just looking at it? Can anyone guess? Yeah, strawberry. So you did not touch it, but you are looking at it. How did you recognize it as the strawberry? Because it's the past memory that you have, the texture that you have perceived before and you have touched before, and also giving that light and shade, like the positive and negative. And there are certain material that we can create certain textures using that. One of the best things is the ceramic. You can have different type of textures by creating using also the patterns. And the jewelry is another good example for it. See here, this jewelry has been made by using the golden threads and just soldering it into a nicer texture. So the texture I told you about, it has the actual, like the dough. If you are using the wooden plank, it gives the actual texture, and also as well as it gives, we can also create the texture by using a different material. So having actual material and the texture itself, we call it tactile texture. And if you are going to make it with using a different materials, we call it implied. So using this technique, this tactile texture, this one has been done. Vincent van Gogh in his artworks, he used the pigments, the color pigments, in a thick position, like using a thick layers of it to give the texture, the rough texture, and different colors and light and shade through it. So it gives a kind of a 3D surface kind of a texture into his artwork. So he's one of the artists who use this impasto technique in his artwork. Another way of you can create a tactile texture is using collage. Also, there are different types of materials and bit and pieces you can use to create a different kind of texture. It's how you use it as well. This is one of the Vincent van Gogh's artwork. See how he uses this impasto technique to show the texture. To give the bends and all that, he used the dark colors, but with thick pigments, using thick pigments. And he's also, I think you guys remember, he also uses another technique called the optical mixing. using the primary colors just closer to each other to generate the secondary color without mixing them. And this is a great example for the implied texture. See, this is like the pop art and the comic cards. You see the texture when you are looking at those stories and those artwork. But when you are looking closer to the comic cards, just enlarge it a little bit, then you can see the pixels used, the dots and all that to create that texture. So that's what it calls, it's like an illusion. When you are looking at it in a distance, you feel the texture, but when you are looking closer to it, actually it created with using different type of material. The same like for the wood as well. This is another type of creating texture. This is called verisimilitude. This is like a photograph actually. So in a photograph, you see the actual real scenario, but actually it has been captured in the 2D surface. So, but verisimilitude means not using the photography, like it has this has been created using the pencil and paint, those materials, not just to take a photograph. But see, it's like creating the real scenario by using giving the real texture kind of a appearance using pencil, paints, and other materials. So, but actually, this is like you have the real texture, but when you touch it or when you look at it closely, it's actually a 2D surface done. This I also very hard to tell. This is a French word. It's called tremplio. I don't know whether it's the pronunciation is right or wrong. It's like you're creating. It says that to fool the eye, like it gives a 3D appearance and a 3D kind of a thing using the colors, but done in the 2D surface. You can, this is most probably a street art. There is a link also, you can just go through and watch it. See some of the example for it. It's kind of a creating the 3D kind of a appearance, but done it in the 2D surface. This is another good example for it. And this texture and pattern, most are using in architectural buildings, the facade, interior spaces, and merchandising, as well as apparel industry. See some of the example how these squares has been repeated. This is a architectural work piece. I think it's on a surface. See, this is a wall creating a pattern using the bricks. You can use these techniques in your project as well. When you are doing interior work, when you are doing your fashion design and merchandising, it's also give a unity for your whole design. See how the pattern has been repeated, how the module has been repeated to create this pattern. This is a kind of a texture. You feel this texture on a facade of a building. This is what now, can you see this brick has been repeated, but even though this is, when you think about the shape, it's like a pattern kind of a thing, but this is looks like a texture most of the time because of this irregular arrangement of modules. These are some of the examples for it. And this is just, I just put at the end, this person is called Mr. Doodle. You can search the Sam Cox, his name. He has done textures on walls and everywhere, but using a black marker. See how it converts the white space into a very dynamic kind of a texture. So that's it for today's lecture. It's a very small one, and I'll go through with you the assignment this week, and also for the study guide for the next quiz next week. Do you guys have any questions with this one? Pattern and rhythm, these things? So for the assignment, we have, sorry, anyone on Zoom have any questions on today's lecture? Okay, I hope there is no questions. Okay, we'll go for the project. Okay. So for the project A8, you need to use this 12 by 15 whiteboard. And what you have to do is think about a location that you have experienced before, or that you think that might help you, like, and as an example, the Eiffel Tower in France, that area. Let's just think about that. So you can use the certain kind of those elements, like very highlighted element like the Eiffel Tower. You can use that as a symbol. And also about some of the colors. The colors, when you are using the colors to highlight the character in that place, like that. Let's say about when you are taking a location in nature, you can use the green and the value of green, like that. So consider about a location and try to identify certain symbols and colors that can represent your pattern. It's like you need to have, like, if you are using the Eiffel Tower, you have to repeat it in a way. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be the same like this. If you have the Eiffel Tower here, repeating the Eiffel Tower here, it can be rotated, it can be mirrored, or you can do anything, but we can we should be easily identify the module and how it repeats. So when we go here, and you can use colors, black, gray, white, and minimum of 2 other colors you have to use. So that means you need to use at least 4 to 5 colors in your composition. See here some of the I will go through, and you can use any material like paint, pencil, and also collage as well. See, this is one example trying to show the San Francisco, California. It's like the Levi's, how he used that symbol has a repeated elements with this other symbolic. So, and this is another one to show the flower and how he tried to emphasize the Japan doesn't matter because it's a country, it's not a location. Actually, it's a total place, that's totally fine. You can go with the country as well. But the things that you use, the symbols and the colors, should represent the character of the place, and this will be a verbal presentation, not a there is no written component into it. So this is verbal presentation or written component. These are some of the examples. See, I learned. There's some of the memories that the some symbols have, certain countries have certain symbols into it. It's like pyramid and this kind of artwork in Egypt. So do you guys have any questions about this assignment? Yeah.
I have a question. When is the project 7? Is that tomorrow for us?
Yeah, tomorrow for everyone.
Okay.
Actually, yeah. Tomorrow night is the due date for this project 7, and project 8 due date is next week, Thursday.
Next Thursday.
Yeah. Next not the coming Thursday, the next, yeah.
Okay.
And let's go for the study guide. So this questions is on rhythm, texture, and pattern. The quiz 5 will be on that. Yes. So as we discussed, the rhythm, pattern are based on what? As we discussed before, it's about the repetition of elements. And what are the characteristics of altering rhythm? It's like having a regular arrangement of the elements. Altering rhythm is if you have the altered elements and they are in a regular arrangement. And what are the characteristics of progressive? Progressive rhythm is like you repeat it, but the changes are happening in a regular arrangement. The changing of those elements will be in a regular arrangement. It's like you have a constant, like it changes half of it and then it's like reducing half like that. It has a the constant value for the change. And polyrhythmic structure is about, you have, let's say you have 2-3 rhythms, like combination of rhythms, mix it together, like for a complex kind of a rhythm. It's like music, most probably. You have the drum beats, you have the keyboard notes. So have different rhythms combined with each other and creating a complex rhythm. And legato means in a rhythm, it's like from one rhythmic pattern to another rhythmic pattern, how it flows, how nicely it flows, like the flowing is the one. And what gives origin to pattern? Origin to pattern is the repetition, because repeating elements is the basis of creating the pattern. And know the difference between texture and pattern. What is the difference between the texture and pattern? Pattern is what we visually see, and texture is kind of a sense of feel, like we has to touch it, or how how we sense the feel by perceiving it as well, because like the kinesthetic empathy will play also for that one. but it's like the sense of touch. And for the pattern, it's about the totally visual. Vincent van Gogh's, yeah, his style is called the expressive element style. The impasto is one of his style. He tried to expressive the value of the paint and certain elements. So it called the his technique is called the expressive showing the expressive element in his artwork. Visual texture and verisimilitude. Verisimilitude is, as you know, we try to create the actual image, but in a 2D surface. But it's you are trying to create the realistic image, but still it's not actually the realistic. It's done by using other materials in a 2D surface. Visual texture is it's kind of the expression of texture on the flat surface. It's the visual text is that's like looking at the texture, but verisimilitude is the creating the realistic texture in a 2D surface. So the rhythm pattern are most probably about repeating, and texture is about sense of feeling or the sense of touch of certain texture. And just keep in mind the pattern has a regular arrangement, but the texture, it's an irregular arrangement. It doesn't have a continuous repetition of certain elements like a regularly. Okay, guys, that's for the next week quiz, and we will have another 2 lectures more. It's for the illusion of motion and illusion of I forgot about it as well. But we will have another motion and the space, illusion of space, and we will have the 16th week lecture. This is like a final review. We will do it for the final exam. We will go through a study guide for that one, for your final exam. Then that's it, guys. Then you are done. And and also I would like to ask you guys, my advisor is having a survey for a certain research. If you guys love to just participate for that one, this online survey you can just go through. Anyone knows about the Qualtrics? Heard about Qualtrics? It's kind of a site that has a certain questionnaire. We can upload it into it. Then it never gives your identity or anything outside. It's just like a database. So I would rather I will let you know when it's done, just to participate for the survey. Just help me with this. I will try to create as an extra credit for it. Yeah.
So when it's ready, are you going to put it on Canvas?
Yeah, I put it on Canvas, and I will also introduce it to you in the lecture time. Yeah, just let you know. Thank you, guys.